Hey, this is Zac.
And I'm Clint, and we wanted to thank Exo-terra for sponsoring this episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Exo-terra is the industry leader in glass terrarium enclosures, and we are a big fan of getting to see the species we work with both at home and at the university.
We utilize Exo-terra caging here at Metazotics, and in addition to top quality terrariums, Exo-terra offers an array of heating options, lighting, supplements, decor, and truthfully anything needed or wanted when keeping reptiles.
Thank you, Exo-terra, for supporting Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Howdy how, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. As always, Zac is here with Clint. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, my friend. Well, a lot of moving around, a lot of moving and shaking. You know, it's been a pretty wild ride the past couple weeks for both of us, but it's been a good one. You know, I have to say I always love this time of year. So
it's my favorite time of year.
Yeah.
It's my favorite time of year because for me, I come off the insanity of the school year, normally go straight into some kind of a trip related to some kind of field work. This time it was, California with all my friends to do the reptile talks and do our herping trip, which of course most of our listeners will know because we did the roundtable episode literally from the Airbnb somewhere in California. Mm-hmm. The fun thing about that trip, by the way, I'm so used to being the guy in charge of trips that it was wonderful. Somebody was asking me, well, where'd you go? And I was like, I don't know.
I didn't know where I was when we were in, California. California. Yep.
We
started up here. We came down here.
California. I was in Central California, and I was in Southern California, and that was the extent.
Exactly.
Yes. So that was cool. And then, came back from that trip, was home for 25 hours. That was it. And then back in the vans, rocket runned off to Kentucky. Obviously, got to see you, hence the subtitle of your name today.
Cuddle Pillow.
Cuddle Pillow. Yes. So for those who don't have social media, I had field work around Paducah, Kentucky, which if you go to Paducah from Wheeling, West Virginia, you quite literally drive right through Evansville. So this was my first time stopping off at Metazotics. I stopped off with my the assistant director of my conservation center at West Liberty, Tanya Khan, and we got to see the shop. And I'm going to say this to everybody, and I'm not just saying this because he's my co-host. Clint, you run a grade A facility. I was beyond impressed with what I saw. And it's really weird to have an envisionment of what something is and then actually go and see it. And I knew you went big and I knew you went hard with everything you did, but because I work with you and I know I've been on Little Picnic. That's all I got to say. Barbecue. Sorry. But seeing that all in action in the multiple stores and literal facility, it was pretty awesome. So you should be proud of yourself, man.
I really apprate that, buddy. It's not just me. There's a lot of hard work from a lot of people that make that happen. For sure.
The team should be proud of.
Yeah.
What you're all creating there is something that's pretty special. So then I went off, did field stuff. Those who are conservation minded probably know a guy named Joel Sartori. He does the photo arc for National Geographic. I've worked with him a bunch with crayfish. So made an arrangement. He came out to Kentucky. And so I was with him, photographing a bunch of crayfishes and freshwater mussels and darters and cavefish and all kinds of random aquatic things. And then on my way back, I stopped off at Metazotics again, figured out some cages that we're going to get for the school, and ended up spending the night in the Bartley household where I got put in a bedroom with 2 pillows.
More than 2, but there were 2 specific pillows.
Yes, 2 Clint pillows. So if you go to our Facebook page, Clint was like, you got to get a picture with the pillows. And I was like, oh, do I have one? I was like, yeah, that was done. So anyway. Then came home and been working this week. And I guess I'll just finish this little update because this is a pretty big deal. For those on YouTube, you'll get to see it. So this is my notebook. And if you look on the cover of this notebook, there's a little snake. It's a hognose snake because this is the outline to chapter 1 of the freaking Hognose book because I'm finally writing. So that was the big deal that happened this week. Is chapter 1 is being drafted of the book. Awesome. I've read everything. I've been prepared. You can't write if you're fragmented mentally. And I had to wait until summer to clear all the fractured thoughts out of my brain from being at school. And now this week it's been a ton of fun. I'm like back in the zone. I'm going to Iowa next week to work on our project. And I've already told everybody out there, when it gets super hot in the middle of the afternoon, I'm going to wherever the hell I can go, and I'm writing my ass off. So we will have, my goal is to have most of the natural history section drafted out by the end of the summer, and I'm on track to get that done. So that was a very long-winded update on Zac. So that's what's going on in my world. What's going on with you?
Well, just like you had a blast out in California. And for those who are wondering why we're not talking about the specifics of that on this episode, I do want to put out there what we're doing is we've got tons of pictures. So the next episode we do is going to be a very visual episode. However, if you are a listener that listens to us on Spotify and doesn't watch, don't worry about it. We're going to be very descriptive. And what we're going to do is we've got pictures of everything. I mean, I'll go ahead and throw out there now. We saw over 50 snakes during this trip, over 15 species. Yeah. But the cool thing on what we want to do is not only show the pictures of what we found, there's some really fun stories that go with this trip and with these finds. And we wanted to ensure that we had the pictures laid out properly so that it, was a good, smooth transition. And, I think, do we decide that we're asking Roy and Kayla and Kerwin to come on to tell theirs? I think we did. I think we discussed that. And so we want to make sure that it works out for everybody because I think some of the best field herping things, it's seeing the pictures, but hearing about the finds and what took place. And I mean, there was a lot of laughs. It was good stuff. So that's why that's not this episode, as we want to make sure that it's going to be, give it justice. So, but anyways, like you, once I got home, I was supposed to be off that next day. I got home about midnight. But after being gone for a week, that wasn't going to fly. I couldn't do that. So I told everybody, I'm not here. I'm going to shut my door, to the office. But I had to come in and at least get some things caught up. They certainly held the fort down, and I'm very happy about that. So what's gone on since coming home, I got to go watch the kids play, a lot of their games, softball, baseball. Missed that, and that's going fantastic. I thought it was hilarious that when Zac came, when you came to visit, one of the things we did during the night that Zac stayed was we went and visited the Henderson location as well.
Sure did.
Which was funny how on Zac's path to Paducah, he's driving down Highway 41. He's going through Henderson. No, it didn't even dawn on him where he was. And he says he looks up and there's Metazotics. That's the other shop as he drives past it. So I thought that was neat. But went over there so Zac could say hey to Ox and meet Danielle, part of our team over there in Henderson. But we stopped by my house to drop off the van that Zac was driving. And so we would just ride together. And we picked up my son Dex, on the way. And Dex is my outdoor boy. Dex is he wants to be covered in mud. That is his happy place. And so I think his first sentence to you after getting in the vehicle was, so when are we going to go look for crawdads? Yeah, no hesitation. 90 seconds. Yeah, he was on it. I hear you're the guy. Let's go do this. So he's pretty stoked. He can't wait to do that this summer. But got to do a little fishing this week with him. Took him out. Got him a nice stringer bluegill, caught him a couple nice bass. So, we're getting to enjoy the spring. And that's one of the different things this year. And I think it's probably like this for most of us. We were looking at how late everything seems to be going as far as breeding, a lot of them anyway. And it's not that we kept them down any later. I think it's truly because we have a soft spring. We're having a spring like what we had when I was a kid, as far as the temperatures. It's not like normally we get about 2 weeks of decent weather and then it's hot. We go straight into summer. But I mean, it's still mid 70s. It's supposed to get up there in the 90s next week. But I mean, for it to be going into June and still be in the mid 70s, that's wow. So.
And on that topic, I've actually talked to a couple people. And so I've had really good luck this year with everything but king snakes.
Same.
Like, I had both my bulls, first time breeding them, both of them won. My Japanese rat snakes, they're gravid. My corns, actually, I had Abbott Line Okati drop a clutch, and she hid them in an area where she decides to make her latrine where she craps. So she laid her eggs where she craps, which was just like
weird.
You hate your kids that much that you're just going to dump them in the dump pile. It was disgusting. But anyway, got those. I've gotten a couple other oddballs, hognose snakes, false water cobras. But my Getula, I bred a bunch because everybody knows I got a bunch. I'd say I'm at about 60%.
Buddy, I'm with you.
Yeah, no California Kings. None of those went.
I've had a few, but not all. But I've had more infertile eggs out of my Getula than what I've ever experienced. We're talking like Easterns, which are bulletproof. It's I double, almost triple clutch those without trying. But yeah, we've had several bad clutches, and it seems to be the mainly the Getula. I've experienced a little bit with the Alterna, not as much really, but basically Kings in general, it's not been the best year for them.
Yeah.
I mentioned the black rats that I was starting to wonder if they were going to go, and then boom, this is normally when they're hatching in my area or about to be within a couple weeks. And I'm just now getting a ton of clutches, but they're hitting. And it's funny because even like Carinata, I haven't had a clutch of Carinata drop yet. I've got some gravid females, I think. I mean, their body structure makes it a little more difficult to tell. I was talking, me and Matt Most were messaging because he's got some Carinata there, and he said, he thinks he's got this one or that one gravid. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure I have 3, but it could be 6, it could be 0. It's, with the way
Most
they
waters
look.
will do that.
Yeah, it's hard, but it's funny. I went in there just to pull some eggs from a Chinese beauty about an hour ago, and I walk in the room and there's a pair of Carinata locked up, so they're still breeding. Even we're going into June, so and I was debating on do I need to keep pairing these or not, but I took a picture to send to Steve to tell him, yeah, we need to keep pairing, apparently. So,
goodness.
So there's that. We're up to 80 clutches now. That's
a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. It's funny. I say I love this time of year, and it's because we look in there, we see all these eggs. And it's like, oh, it's so cool. It's so awesome, because we're not yet at that time of year when it's like 6 more clutches are hatching today. It's
July's a different month.
yes. That's when you start to feel it. So, but that's good. We do have something interesting taking place out here that we're going to see how it kind of affects things. So the business next door, somebody bought the building finally next door, and they're putting in a gas station.
Oh dear.
Yeah. And we don't know why. This is a small town. It only has 2 fast food places, there's an Arby's and a Subway. That's it in this town. But there are 4 gas stations on a 2-mile road already. And that's what they're putting. So it's like, oh, okay. But I think there's a little bit of confusion on the property line. So we're having conversations. I mean,
I'll step back and watch that with some popcorn.
So far, so good. It's play nice until you don't have to. But we'll see. We'll see what goes on there. But again, all in, things are going, pretty well, because we've got tons of eggs already, and we still do have a lot of gravid females. So this was funny, and then I think we'll wrap it up for my update. So we've got the big Metazotics nest boxes, in the new Barons, the 4 Baron Racer females that we have. And there's, I see them go in and out, a few of them. There's one in particular that she loves hers. She gets in it. She loves hanging out. But I don't think it has a damn thing to do with laying. These things are smart.
They're very smart.
She's in it, and she barely has her head where she can see what's going on out. But you can't really see her head unless you duck down and kind of look at an angle. But she's watching, and it's more or less like she's ready to ambush whatever moves. It's like, man, these things are on it, and see, and I hadn't even noticed. I said something about, well, this one's certainly using hers. And Steve goes, yeah, bend down here and look. She's waiting is what she's doing. So
that's cool.
But yeah, pretty neat stuff.
Very, very cool. All right. Now, I know you got a big market update. You want to go first?
I do. I can do that. As always, our market update is brought to you by the Show Me Reptile Show and Show Me Reptile Marketplace. Please, if you are out and about and looking to go see some reptiles, buy some reptiles, doing all that in person, look for a Show Me Reptile Show near you. As we always say, support those that support us in the colubrid community. And Mickey and his team certainly do that. I also tell you, if you haven't seen the video his team just put out for the Colubrid Fest 2025, it's short, but man, it's awesome.
It's on point.
Yeah, that music, it just, you're getting pumped, for it. So look on social media, look on Mickey's page, look at the Show Me Reptile page, look on Metazotics or my personal page. I know I shared it too. And I
actually have a comment about that. I put it on my stories. And one of my former students messaged me and said, "You are not cool enough to put that on your story." All right.
Yeah, it is a nice video. It's tough. So,
yep.
All right. Well, let's, we are going to go over some numbers and things are going to be a little off on timing because normally we're hitting it very early in the month. And here we basically missed April. Because we hit it at the end of March, and now we're hitting it at the end of May. So a little bit of a bigger gap than what we've had at any other point. But let me get this ready to show. And let's go present, share screen. Okay. All right, we've got that up there now. So, okay, so here's the graph we always start off with. And what we're looking at here, for those who can't see it, is we're looking at the listings for ball pythons as well as total listings of snakes. And right now we're looking at January of last year all the way up to now, May 29th. And it's an interesting pattern, and here's why I say that, because we knew that we would be looking at peaks and valleys, in a trend. But what I think is very interesting is even when comparing to May of last year, we are looking at the lowest number of listings so far, ever since we've been tracking this since January of last year. And I find that, to me, it's a good thing because it means that there is less supply. And, of course, people can argue that means there's less demand, but from what I'm seeing, that is not the truth. And I'll go into that a little more here later. But just to give you an idea on the change from basically the end of March, we can call it 1st April, to now, ball pythons dropped from 33,471 down to 29,615. And total listings dropped from 47,101 down to 41,944. So we saw some significant change in ball pythons as well as total. And we'll keep looking here. And let's jump over to colubrids because we know that that's what everybody likes to hear. Now, of course, colubrids, we saw that giant jump from July of this year, and July of last year, upwards to December. Huge growth in the colubrid market, driven primarily by hognose, that really took off, as well as garters. But let's go ahead and we'll kind of take a peek at what we're looking at here. We've got Pituophis, so you got your bulls, pines, and gophers. We are now at 217 currently listed. Corn snakes were at 1,316. Garters, 24. 24 garters. Hognose, 25.27. So still number one there. We'll look at a percentage breakdown here in a second. House snakes, 51. Kings, 959. Milks, 358. Rat snakes, 363.
Man.
All others, 137. And so we see the trend. If we're looking from basically March to now, everything's continuing to decline. And that makes complete sense. Why? Because we don't have anything really being produced yet. Everything that is produced, it's either going to sell or it's going to sit, one of those two. So we shouldn't see an incline yet, and we don't. But now let's get over here to some of the market share, what we're looking at. So ball pythons at 71%, and that's rounded, which basically keeps them pretty flat from last time. They actually lost half a point, but due to rounding, it's really no different. Other pythons, they had a change. Ball pythons had a 3,856 unit change, which gave them a half point drop in market share. Other pythons had a 72 unit change, which actually increased their market share by 0.4, and that's really just because of the drop in ball pythons, not because there were more other pythons. That rings true with boas as well. There are actually 310 less boas than last time we were updating. However, their market share is 10.3%, which is a half point more than what it was last time. Again, that percentage only increased because the number of ball pythons significantly decreased. Next up, colubrids. There were actually 919 fewer colubrids listed than there were in April, and which is just under a half point drop in market share. But all in, there were 5,157 fewer snakes listed, which is almost an 11-point drop in the total size of the market of what's available, which is very good if you know what to do with that right now. As far as the colubrid market share breakdown, I think there's one thing I'm going to point out here in a second that I thought was pretty cool. So, again, hognose, I cut off the hognose number there. Hognose are the big ones. I mean, I want to say they're still looking at roughly the 40-ish% mark. I'll have to move some things to realize what that was. Corn snakes, 22%. We've got garters. They're less than 1%. As I keep saying, there's your sleeper category. I'll tell you what, I have a feeling that there's going to be some garter uptick whenever we have our next episode with with what we're going to show you guys. Yeah. Bulls, pines, and gophers, only 4%, which again, that blows me away whenever we're putting, 3 segments in one, all lumped into Pituophis and only making up 4% of the colubrid market. That's crazy. Rat snakes at 6%, milk snakes at 6%, king snakes at 16%. The all other colubrid category is at 2%. Here's the one I find interesting. House snakes. House snakes are only making up 1%, meaning there is very little competition in that particular category. So April, it's no wonder you absolutely kill it, girl. Because not only does she do it well, and she has some of the top-notch house snakes out there, but when I see that it's such a small sliver, that is April sandbox. So continue to kill it. That's fantastic. I wanted to end on just some kind of current trends, patterns, and advice. So current trends and patterns, things to watch. I keep talking about tariffs because they bounce back and forth. I can tell you most sliding glass PVC cages, the ones that have the screen tops, the metal framing, and basically kind of the PVC inserts, that's going to be Dubia.com. That's going to be Vivarium Electronics. There's several others. Most of that caging is going to go up probably $70 to $100. because of the tariff fiasco that we played out, and that's coming direct. I know, like, if you follow Darian on social media, he's already put this out there that that's happening. And I've talked to some of the other business owners that deal in these, and that's the case. That's just what we're going to have to deal with. Several ships launched the same day. And what I mean by that is whenever the tariffs backed off from China, the overall consensus was that might be today, that might be tomorrow. Next week, this could completely flip, and then it's 300% tariffs. You don't know what's happening. So there were a lot of companies that were holding shipments, meaning they had it worked out with individuals in China not to ship, not to hit the water, because then it'll be, they get hit with the tariffs if it's in the water during that time. So as soon as those tariffs were lifted, boom, you had this mass exodus, which means you're going to have a mass import issue. The harbors are going to be a bit backed up. So we're not out of it yet. There's still going to be delays in products. It's going to be, interesting. Buyers are getting hungry. So the supply is at its lowest, which we just saw. There is not as much to go around as what there normally is. The demand is increasing. I'm personally seeing animals that have sat for a while get interest and go home like that. So my advice would be, if you have anything that you don't have listed that you're wanting to, to get out there, get it listed now. You've got about a month, maybe 6 weeks at most, before we start seeing that uptick in animals that are listed. So this is your chance. This is the best time of the year for you to get your animals front and center without having as much quote unquote competition, on those. Shows are continuing to show success. While we typically look at our society now as an online society, we want to be able to order it with our thumbs, have it shipped straight to our door. I'm seeing a much bigger presence at the shows and a buying presence than what you would expect in most cases. And I think that comes down to shipping. Now, with shipping rates dropping drastically with Morph Market and what they've done, we are seeing online sales continue to move. But I think that we've just seen this shift to where they want to see it in person if they can. They don't want to pay shipping if they can avoid it. So get out at shows, utilize those. I want to give some kind of 30 and 60-day advice. List everything. Okay, I'm telling you, I can't stress that enough. If there are things that you are wanting to sell, get it out there and get it out there now, because there are eyeballs that are looking. They're looking every single day, and there's not going to be as many animals, and especially if you've got something, I don't even want to call it unique, but less common. Get it out there. There are fewer of them, and so it's a seller's market at the moment. Diversify. So over the next 30 to 60 days, we're going to be going into baby season. So there's going to be a lot of babies that become available. If you are someone who considers yourself a seller and does want to be able to work the shows and kind of do this as a side project, as a business, whatever it is that you're looking to do, I would highly advise that you also do some buying in the next 60 days. Diversify what you're working with. It's good to have your strengths. It's good to have what you're known for. But if that's all you have on your table, if that's not what that particular show, that particular the locals are interested in, you're going to struggle. You're going to have a bad day. You're going to think the show sucks. And that's probably not the case. I've been to shows that do suck and still do well, because you want to cover your bases. So if you're someone who's into ball pythons and you're listening, getting into colubrids, work with a few different kinds. If you're someone who's into colubrids, if you're working with corn snakes, primarily, or hognose snakes primarily, I'm going to suggest you diversify and get a hold of some other things as they become available during this season. That way, yeah, you may be sitting 2 or 3 years before you're producing them, but getting a hold of adults later, not only is it more pricey, but it's less likely to happen. And I'm always cautious when someone has adults for sale. Why are they moving adults? So get your babies, get them early. Enhance your presence over the next 60 days. Get pictures of, even if it's just your breeders, even if you don't have babies available, get pictures of your animals and get them posted. Get on social media, whether it's in the groups, whether it's on your own pages. Just get things out there so people know the kind of animals that you're working with and start to kind of wet the mouth a little bit. Let them start wanting what you have and seeing what you're working with, and that's going to help you come baby time. Get active on socials, just said that. Show breeding progress. So one of the things that we do out here at Metazotics, and we've mentioned this before, and as a reminder, we talk all the time about, hey, this is laid eggs, this is laid eggs. And I just mentioned that we have 80 clutches. Well, me saying that we have 80 clutches isn't telling you what we're going to have available. So what we do is we have a newsletter every Monday that comes out, and it's updated with what's in the incubator, when its expected hatch date is. And we do that so that people who, because I can tell you right now, if you ask me, so, what are you expecting this year? I'm a lot. I mean, there's probably, out of those 80, there's at least 55 of those clutches that I never saw. They were laid, and Corey and or Steve got them packaged, labeled, put in the incubator, written on the list. And so, I don't really see them till I type them in. But my point is, so for you guys, if you want to sign up for that, go to metazotics.com, and you can have that emailed to you every Monday. Like I said, a full list of what's incubating, what's about to be available, as well as what is available. But what I would say is, as you have pairs that are locked up, as you have eggs that are laid, snap a quick picture. It doesn't have to be fancy. Post it. Let people know that this is what you have coming, and you may have people watching for them as they, kind of just chomping at the bit for them to become available, and that's really going to help you out. Create a funnel point if you can. If you have a website, you want to get everything kind of directed to that website. If you don't, if it's your Morph Market account, or if it's your Facebook account, whatever, you want to have every picture you post, everything you say or do about reptiles, you want to point people in that direction. You want to point them to one spot to view everything that you've got going on. If you concentrate on this stuff that I just listed over the next 60 days, you're going to have a really good season. It's at least going to be better than what it was going to be. So just wanted to create that, since we're going into really the most important part of the breeding season, or the selling season, for those of us on the business side. So I just hoping everybody has a great season, and want to do my part to assist in that. So that is what I got, my friend.
All right, cool. Okay, I'll do the science update now. So, science update, as always, brought to us by Rare Genetics, Inc. We got Kayla and Ben cranking away, get those shed skins to them. We haven't touched base with Kayla and Ben in a couple weeks now, so I'm not entirely certain what they're up to, but I know they're up to something that involves colubrids and figuring out the genotyping. Another thing I want to push for them is sexing snakes. So at the university, we have a bunch of Alephae bimaculata, which, by the way, is a massively underrated Asian rat snake. Nobody really ever talks about bimax, and these guys only get to be like 30 inches long max, and they have a really unique build. They look like a garter snake and a rat snake had a bastard baby. So they've got a really cool gestalt to them, and I love them to death. And we got a bunch of them, and my people, we always get eggs, and we don't want eggs. And this was the year I told my staff, sex them, probe them. Let's make sure that only the females go on exhibit. And sure enough, I got back from Kentucky and was confronted with the buybacks are gravid again. It's like, what the hell? So we are actually going to use RGI this time. Now, I probed the one that came to be a male. Somebody else probed it, came to be a female. But they have a service where they will do genotyping, sexing, and you can't screw that up. If you got, the correct sex chromosomes equal biological sex, that's it. So I actually said, when I get back from Iowa, we're going to call RGI and we're sending away all the BIMAC, tissue, blood, whatever the hell we got to send them, because all of our snakes are pit tagged. And we're going to finally figure out who the hell is the extremely lucky male hanging out with a whole lot of ladies because he's good at his job, which we don't want him to do. So anyway, so use RGI for that service. Highly recommend them. I'm going to be doing it myself.
So you tell me I've got more babies coming this year?
Yeah, yes, you do, Clint. Yes. Yes, you do. So, yeah. Anyway, okay. Hit the wrong button on my computer. That got weird. All right. So we all know about my infamous feud with the Mountain King snake keepers of the world. And I started dominance the last time we did a science update because it's simply a fact that the Getula kings are the kings of the snake world when it comes to constriction. So we can't deny that. But I am willing to throw an olive branch out into the mix. I could be talking about a hognose snake paper tonight. I could be talking about a garter snake paper tonight, a water snake paper, Spilotes paper, but I am talking about Mountain King snakes tonight because I found this paper about 6 months ago. I don't remember where I found it. I don't remember how I found it. But for all of the Mountain King lovers of the world, and I shouldn't say Mountain Kings, I should say the Mexicana subsection of Mountain Kings. There we go. This is a paper that you have to get. If you claim to be a Leonis, a Greeri, a Rutheni, an Alterna person, you just have to get a copy of this paper. So it is written by Hansen and Salmon. And what's really cool here is this is Robert Hansen, who wrote the California book that we talked about with the last episode for the science update. And then Salmon here is a well-known herpetoculturalist. And both of these guys are a perfect amalgamation of I do science and I keep, which, I just love celebrating the people that can that fall in that realm. And so what this paper is it's essentially a review type paper. It's not really anything novel, but what they did is they did every single Mex or Mexicana complex keeper a massive service by taking all the literature up to when it came out. Now it's still getting a little old. It's 2017, and it's a giant review paper, but it's pretty freaking fantastic. And I was reading this on the airplane on the way home from our Cali trip, and I thought I got to do that one next. So, Olive Branch from the Getula Mexicana Wars. I am giving all of you the spotlight tonight because I'm a giver. So if we look at this paper, I am going to scroll. So if you're in your car, you can't see this, and I'm sorry, but like it goes so far as to give a lot of maps. So this is the extent of the Mexicanus group globally, and as you can see, central Mexico up into western Texas. The maps in here are kind of fantastic. Then you get a nice little checklist of where the animals are found. A wonderful review of all the distribution information. And as someone who has done this work, this is about as tedious as going through tax code. You got to go through museum records, literature records, all those big bad books, Reptiles and Amphibians of Texas, Reptiles and Amphibians of Arizona, Reptiles and Amphibians of New Mexico, and then all the Mexican literature to generate these big lists. And when you read it, it can be a little bit mundane and boring, but what you don't realize is you can check out every one of those citations that's up on the screen if you're looking on YouTube, because there's a bibliography and it just builds with the amount of knowledge you can get. I'm going to skip down to, so here's the distribution of Alterna. All of those of you who keep Alterna. And you can see we got it east of the Rio Grande where we got a lot of records. And then it goes all the way down here into southern Mexico. And there's this great big area without any dots. Now, I teach my students this all the time. You might look at that map and be like, oh, there's no Alterna there. What that is almost certainly reflecting, though, is bias in investigation. Because if you look across the Rio Grande in the United States, there's a ton of dots. I don't know how many people in Mexico are like, oh, Alterna. You know, so that and there might be records that are just not published. So what this enables you to do as a keeper, we talk about this evidence-based keeping all the time. You can look at this map. You can kind of eyeball where the sites are. You can go to the references and get that information. Then you can go to WeatherSpark, look up those villages and see how, what the temperature is, and maybe do some pretty cool keeping that way. All right. So there's if we come down here, the other thing is these habitat shots. I love these habitat shots. Those of you who want to do a naturalistic viv for your Mexicana Kings and you live in, I don't know, Evansville, because Clint just did this.
Mine's not that great. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, what the hell you're going to put in the viv and what it should look like? Boom, there it is. So like right off the bat, Alterna, there's a yucca. If you're looking for some kind of plant to do a biotope type enclosure, you can use this publication to do that. And I'm going to talk about that with Leonis when we get to Leonis. And so there's all these species accounts. There's some more Alterna. And it's just really cool how this all goes down. So here's Leonis. This is the one that I keep. And I am going to set up a nice, fancy, I got a 3-foot Exo-terra. I think it's their large or extra large. And I was thinking, what the hell am I going to do with my office? And my Leonis are going to get it. And so, now I know where the hell they live. Because I really didn't know where they were, to be honest with you. And then boom. And one of the things I realized right off the bat, oh, these things have agave plants where they live. Well, that's cool. I can go to the local store and pick up some agave for my naturalistic viv. And who knows, maybe in 100 years make tequila. So looking onward here, we move down through the pub, and then the ultimate map is this one. This is a very sexy map. And so there you go. If you like Mexicana, the Mexicana group, you can see where they all are. They even have Web-Eye, which I know is the one we don't have in the States. Greer-Eye, Ruthven-Eye, So this is just a go-to paper. You need to get the Mountain King Snake book by, I think it's Hubs, right? Yeah, by Hubs, and then pick up this paper. And those of you who do this work, you're good to go. Now, as a conservation biologist, I also like it when people talk about conservation. And what's super interesting is we got herpetoculturalists, also, herpetologists. I identify with this world very intimately. They do for each species a conservation assessment, and they talk about these ones aren't doing that great. These ones are doing great. So pretty cool stuff. And then finally, this table is awesome. Table 4 in the book, in the paper, they do a year by year by year table of the taxonomic literature on these snakes. So if you ever wondered when the hell did it go from Lampropeltis thayeri to Lampropeltis leonis, it's in this table. And because this table exists, that's also in the bibliography. So the Mex peeps of the world, the Alterna, Leonis, Greer-Eye, Ruthven-Eye people of the world, you need to get yourself a copy of this paper. If you want this paper, I will happily get it to you. You just need to email me. If you email me at zloafman@westliberty.edu, I can send it to you. It's a little bit too big to send over Messenger. It's got to be an email. And I will get it to you. Now, it might take me a little bit to get it to you, and I don't mind if you bug me again, but I'm happy to send it to you because it's an open access paper. I can do that.
I want it.
There you go. I'll send it to you right after this, bud. But very, very cool paper. And now, there you go. The Mex of the world got some praise by Dr. Loafman, also known as Zac. So, okay. Are we ready to bring on our guest?
I think so. I just want to say I think he's coming around, guys. I think this
Well, I got one of these bastards gravid in that rack behind me. And I'm like, God damn it. it's a Leonis too. And I thought maybe she isn't oh no, she's gonna drop. Like she looks like a kabasi on the back end. Like there's eggs in there. So I'm gonna have my first go at these guys this year.
Love it.
We shall see how this goes.
Well, once he gets a paper that's got a bunch of parentheses, like the one that he just posted there, because if you didn't see it, trust me, there's a lot of parentheses in that paper. That's usually the area I kind of move through. That's my problem. I'm not that guy. I love having a Zac that can just, can you read this and put it in I just need cliff notes to this part of it. But no, that's awesome, man. Those maps, like you're saying, being able to see those, it in the pictures of the habitat. I'm really, really digging, seeing things like that. And now I'm not like you where I can, to me, I'm like, oh, that's a cool plant. I don't know what the hell any of it all. But it looks nice. And that's when I start asking people, hey, do you know what this is? So
you've got a Zac.
That's so exactly. I've got a
what's
Zac.
This blue-green one? There you go.
So very cool, man.
Okay.
Well, are we going to be ready to move into our guest?
Heck yeah.
Well, I just want to say that our the guest segment, as always, is brought to you by ReptiChip. ReptiChip has got some phenomenal products out there with, all of it, kind of most of it anyway, starting with the, from coconut and the husk being broke down into so many different products with different, whether it's big chunks, whether it's a fine powder. I know that Zac and myself both use it for many, many things over here. I mean, heck, I can even use it for my Alterna when it comes to their nest boxes. So please check them out. If you're using any kind of coconut product, use ReptiChip. That brand is top notch, and they're doing some good things in the hobby. So turn it back over to you.
Okay. So our guest tonight is Ryu with Blackstone Exotics, and she also happens to work at Reptilandia as well. And she's been all over social media in the past couple weeks, and we got to talk to her at the Reptile Talks in California because she's one of the few people that breeds a snake that many people wish they could keep and breed, and that would be Coachwhips. Yeah. And the Coachwhips that she's breeding are very special. She's got some morph projects potentially popping, and then obviously Ryu's huge on naturalistic keeping and snake behavior and kind of the angles that we like to push on the show. So it was only natural that we would have her on the show. So with that being said, thanks for coming on. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing good. Excited about a lot of new stuff hatching and everything. It's just really exciting having new projects,
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We're excited about this episode. At least, I mean, I'll speak for myself here where I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know if I've seen a Coachwhip in person. I may have at some point at a show, but it's just, I mean, something very rare. So, no experience with Coachwhips at all, just racers. But I think that it's so neat that we're going to get to talk about them tonight, as well as, for someone who's produced Coachwhips, is breeding them. This is exciting. I like the oddball stuff. So,
heck yeah.
Very neat.
So with that being said, how did you get into herps in the first place?
Oh man. So I've always been into them ever since I was a little kid. And then I eventually started going and working at reptile shop. But actually, funny story, when I was a kid, one of my favorite snakes I ever caught was a racer. And I grew up in Michigan, so we had blue racers.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, I have a baby, and she's one of my favorites right now. I hope to breed them in the future too. But yeah, this particular blue racer, it was very strange. It had not like an injury, but it had baby blue eyes, and then the pupil was pink.
Whoa.
It was very odd. Yeah, and I'll never forget that animal. I don't know. It was really neat. And then you fast forward to when I moved to Virginia Beach later in life in my early 20s. my friend had shown me a picture of a really cool lizard, and it was an abronia. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I would kill to have one of those. And then I ended up going to a reptile specialist shop out there, and they had them. And I just fell in love with everything there. The Anolis barbatus became my first lizard in my adult life. It's super, super charming species. Really easy to keep. Just all around great lizards. And then the first snake I got there was a Savu python. Another favorite of mine. Yeah. Back when they were like maybe 150 to $200 instead.
Oh yeah, they're not that now.
No. But yeah, I just kept working at other places, and then one day I met Ari over Love of Bullens Pythons, and I came with him along for this zoo project at Reptilandia, and just, you just keep going, and you start working with a bunch of different things, and you find what you really, really like the most, and kind of dial in on those specific species and stuff.
Yeah,
I agree. Now, you said you've been into it since you were, a little girl. Were there others around you, as far as like family members or friends, when you were that young, that were into it too, or was it just you?
It was pretty much just me, but my parents just supported everything I did. My mom grew up like absolutely mortified of snakes, but she didn't force me to like not go after him at all. She knew I loved him, so she let me do my thing, as long as I was safe. But then as I grew up and kind of talked to her about him and educated her, she now absolutely loves him. So I try to do that with everybody I can. I just want them to understand them. They don't even have to like them or want to hold them, as long as they respect them and know how important they are.
We're on the same page. That's my thing.
Yeah, I think that that's so much, and I want to make this point, I guess, and it's not just about snakes. It's about, for any of us that are listening that are parents, that's probably the best parent that you can be. Is simply, you don't have to love what the kid loves. You don't have to be into it, but if they find something they love, something they want to take the time to learn about without being forced to learn, support that. Support that. You never know where it's going to go. I mean, my mother's take on it was, there's worse you could have got into. She always acted that. My father, he really didn't care either way, but he's going to help me build cages. He's going to help me build racks. So I just think that's great, that your parents kind of took that same philosophy on it, where it's, may not be their thing, but if it's really yours, they're going to back you. So, I hope to be that parent on whatever it is. I've got one kid who he's got a different thing every day. He gets expensive, and another who it seems like he kind of is finding his focus, but so parents, just support your kids. So.
Yeah. They don't even we have a daughter in high school, and she loves the animals, but she's not into them in the way we are, and that's okay. They don't have to love the same things I do, just whatever makes them passionate, as long as it's not hurting anybody.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Cool. So we know that we're obviously going to be talking about Coachwhips, Masticophis. Are there other colubrids that you have kept in the past or you're keeping now? And I know the answer is yes. and when you start rattling off these Latin names, for our good friend Clint, you could throw a common name in there. That would be great.
Before you do this, one California story that was funny, and I don't even know if you realize this or not. So we all went to dinner together.
Yes.
And that was a blast, by the way. Had so much fun at that dinner. The group that we were with, guys, were
my people.
They were. And it doesn't mean that they're not my people. It means they are Latin name users big time. I'm not. I am for some things, but most I am not. So I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? If I ask what they're talking about every time another species is mentioned, they're really going to think I'm an idiot by the time this dinner's over. So it got to the point where there was a lot of smiling and nodding by me.
It was.
And Zac called me out on it when we got back to
Only
the
a
room.
couple times.
Well, when we got back to the room, he goes, so during that conversation, you probably only knew about half of the species that were being talked about. And I go, if that. And he goes, I can tell by your face. I'm like, yeah, I'm just an idiot. It's common names are better for me. That's just this is what it is.
No,
So, yes.
it
So
really,
please.
I was gonna say it's like learning a language. It's really around being around it a lot. Like, for example, when I was working at reptile shops and stuff, I had a lot of, I don't know, commoners, like people who aren't deep into the hobby. So, it was just common names for everything. And then when I started working at the zoo, it's Latin names for everything, and it's just because of what environment I'm in at the time.
Yeah.
So now I feel bad because sometimes guests will ask me, "Oh, what's the name of this?" And I'll be like, I don't remember the common name. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'll like look over at the sign sometimes just to figure out what the common name was again because I only remember the Latin. So I'll do my best.
All right, go for it.
Oh God.
So what were the colubris you were keeping? Because there were some pretty cool ones.
Right now or in general?
Just in general, and fast forward to now.
Okay. So I have to say one of my favorites was a speckled king snake.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic animal. I absolutely love them.
Yeah.
A lot of I like a lot of small colubrids too, just really oddball ones that not a lot of people keep because they feed on strange things and are just very particular. I like a lot of slug eaters, so Exo-terra, which is that blunt-headed tree snake? Or no, is that Metazotics?
That's Metazotics, the blunt-headed.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I had those too, and those are also great. But
yeah.
What else? Right now, one of my other favorite little specialist snakes that I have that's a colubrid is it is God, why am I blanking now? Because I'm trying to think of the common name at the same time.
You're right.
I call it the mock viper, I guess, is what I'd say. The common, they're a lot like them, where they change. Huh?
Is it Thamnodynastes?
Yes, yes, Thamnodynastes, Palladus. I love that species. They're so interesting. They're so laid back. It's just cool seeing the slit in their pupil, and then it dilates, and then they hood out, and they seem really intelligent in a way.
They're related to Barons racers and false water cobras.
I didn't know that, but that makes me love them even more, especially because of Hydrodynastes.
There you go.
Which is another favorite I've raised up from babies. Let's see. I have just a bunch of random racers right now. Buttermilk racers, blue racers, a bunch of different kinds of Coachwhips. The hissing sand snakes.
Yeah, that's a cool one.
Yeah. I'm trying to get male because the second one was wrongly sexed before it was sent to me, which I mean I don't blame them because they're really, really difficult to sex. It's mainly by shed. So I would love to breed those someday. They're very interesting as well. It's a lot of these snakes that people don't really think about. You even put a camera on them and you see all the weird things they do, and they're weird. Racers are really weird, and that's why
we're going to talk about your use of cameras here in a sec.
Yeah,
and those species, I think, would be a really cool one to set cameras up on because even if you watch them out in the wild, because if you live in an area that has racers, typically racers are going to be some of the most prevalent in the area. At least, speaking where we're at, if you have a spot where black racers are, you're going to see black racers because they're more active during the heat, during the day than what a lot of the others are going to be. But they move a lot. They, do the periscoping. They're very smart hunters because they have such a fast metabolism. They have to be successful at hunting more so than what a lot of the others are. So I do think that if there were some species or, a group that would be cool to watch, videos long-term on, it would be them. They're going to probably exhibit more behaviors than what a lot of other species would. So pretty neat there.
Yeah, they're really cool. Yeah, and really smart. My silver female on exhibit, she just she started recognizing feeding tools, not even the food itself, but I'll be on the other side and she'll see me walking by and she'll come up and periscope and get all crazy,
Yeah,
So it's really funny
nice.
to see them do all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
So with that being said, when did you get into Coachwhips? Why did you get into Coachwhips? And what is it about Coachwhips that keeps your attention? So basically, why Coachwhips?
It's hard to remember how I got into them, to be honest with you. It felt like it was just one day I was like, bam, I love these things. They're great. I picked up a wild-caught baby Western from a table once, and I raised her up, and I don't know, it was just something I always thought was cool and wanted, and then I finally got one, and I'm like, oh, well, this is it. And then I just started getting more and more, and there's probably 20-something now with all the babies.
Holy hell, that's a lot.
Yeah. So
Man.
I have them from all over. So, I mean, that's also good for breeding as well. But, and then as far as like what makes them interesting is they're super intelligent. They're clowns, like straight up, they're clowns. They're super funny to watch. They do the dumbest things and it's just great. They're so dumb sometimes. And then just like little behaviors, and I don't know how to explain it. Not only that, but they come in all kinds of different colorations, and it's just like nature's own morphs, they have their own as it is, and they're absolutely beautiful. And they display great. Not a lot of people would think that, but they actually aren't always jerks, You can get them out and handle them, and then they'll sit out and display under a light and stuff like that. So I think it's just the best of everything in a snake.
As we are about to kind of go into some of the different ones that you keep and maybe how you're keeping them, I want to ask this question so that we know kind of how to ask the next few. Do you, when it comes to your Coachwhips and the different racers you have, are the setups basically the same, or do you have differences in between the different species you work with? Kind of that, and we'll get into the specifics here in a minute. I'm just curious if we're going to be talking about these blanketed or if we're going to need to kind of break some of this up, in our conversation.
So like overall, it's a similar type of setup. Sometimes I'll use slightly different beddings or different temperatures depending on where they're coming from. Like I'll add in new leaf litter and stuff for the smell. And then like who climbs more, who doesn't. It just kind of depends on where they're from. But for the most part, very similar. Except, when it comes to the hissing sand snakes where it's like they like bright UV and really hot. So they're from a different part of the world. So they're very different when it comes to keeping.
So I think the one that I'd like to kind of ask about first is one I think is really, really cool. The buttermilk racer.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so pretty, so neat looking. And if Zach, if you're good with that, I'd kind of like to
Yo.
go after that one first, because that's, if there's kind of two that I have in my mind that if I'm going to ever take that step in working with racers or coach whips, that's the racer that I want right there, the buttermilk. And I think there's probably a lot of people listening that would say the same thing,
Yeah.
because they are just such a good looking species. So, can you kind of walk us through what got you into those, kind of, how you work with them, what, all of it, everything we need to know about a buttermilk.
Okay, so they're very interesting. They seem to be kind of elusive unless you know exactly where to find them, and I'm not one of those people, unfortunately. But yeah, they're also pretty variable when it comes to like speckling and colorations and stuff like that. Yeah, my male on the right, as you can see, is very dark and has very few specks to him. And then I wasn't able to find a picture, but my friend, she lent me her female on breeding loan, and she's super blue, speckly, so gorgeous. And so I'm trying my best with them. Like I'll see him try every once in a while, but it might be one of those things that just takes a little time to get going. But yeah, I mean, trying to think of exactly how to explain them other than that, but
So the enclosures that you're keeping them in, are
yeah.
they PVCs? Are they tubs? Are they aquariums? Are they racks?
So
What would you say is a no-go? And what would you say is this is the way that you should keep a coluber?
So I would say I mainly keep them in PVC. The minimum, it doesn't sound very big, but like the minimum size for like my Coachwhips adults and such are like 5 long and then 3 tall. But the way I combat this as well is having all kinds of things for them to climb over and hide under. Their favorite thing is having like a wooden board or tin, and then like a hide box I make out of one of those. Everybody knows the big Rubbermaid tubs. So
Yeah.
I fill that with sphagnum moss for a soft area. Just all these different textures and leaf litters and smells. So it kind of keeps them interested and not bored. I've heard a lot of horror stories where I guess in the past people were having trouble keeping them alive and their faces were getting banged up and everything. And I've never had anything close to that happen. So I think, maybe I'm doing something right there. But yeah, I prefer PVC, but I'll raise them up, in 20 gallons and stuff. They just keep stepping up to a larger enclosure as we go. And good airflow, I think, is important as well. And then when it comes to hatchlings, it's usually like a small rack. But the thing with hatchlings is you really, really have to make sure it's as tight as it gets because they are little escape artists.
I can totally see them.
Yeah,
yeah.
say I wouldn't be surprised with them being so active.
Yeah.
You know they're constantly cruising. So if there's a way, they're going to find it. I wouldn't doubt that at all. What kind of tips? And you talked about UVB just a moment ago for the sand snakes, but what are you putting on as far as lighting and heating when it comes to these with the buttermilks? I guess.
Are you heating with a heat lamp or heat panels or both or neither? Or how's the thermal husbandry for these? Because I'm certain that's got to be a key component.
Yeah. So I prefer to have overhead basking for them. Just for me, it kind of replicates, how I said they go under the boards and stuff. And then just like in the wild, they can come out and bask in a sunspot, kind of like how you would find one in the wild. You just see them laying there and then they see you and they start taking off. But I mean, of course, they don't do that in captivity because they get used to you. But yeah, so basking, it can get in the 90s. because they seem to really like that. And sometimes my room can get a little hot, so I try to not get it in the hundreds overall, so it goes any higher, you know what I mean? But on the cooler side, I kind of like to get it around 72 to 74, so they have that gradient as
Nice.
well. Yeah. And then I give all the racers UV. I don't know, I just think it's important, and I'm glad more and more people are realizing, you know, with snakes, you can give them that kind of option as well, and it's just as helpful, you know, to all of them.
I think it's cool that you do that, because in Iowa, to kind of keep the project relevant to herpetoculture, because we could just do herpetology and be done with it, but that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it to help the snakes and to gather in situ data that we can then share with the herpetological community for the people that do want to do evidence-based husbandry. But the students have been tracking racers. They love, I would say that at our field site, the hognose snakes are number one as far as people getting geeked. And then right behind the hogs, they're tied. It's the blue racers, because we have some on our site that are like Smurf blue. They're not,
Oh,
you don't have to squint and see the blue. And then we have bull snakes. And I told all the students, because when we take data, it's all electronic with an app that's on all of their phones. I bought every grad student a pack, and I bought everybody a solarimeter. So they are all running around, and whenever we see a snake out doing actual things during the day, one of the things they do is they run up and they grab that solarimeter value, so we will actually be able to publish papers that show what the UV in the field was if you want to keep these things. And I forget who was telling me about it. It may have been my undergrad, but they were basically saying, like, we do not see the racers unless the sun is ripping. Like, and we kind of knew that, but we actually are showing, like, the UV values are pretty freaking high when the fox eye, that's the subspecies for the blue racer, are, you know, slithering around our sand prairie that we're studying. So that's cool that you're doing I'm pretty sure that has to benefit them in some way. There's no way it doesn't.
What percent UV are you running on them?
Oh God, I'm so bad at that. Usually it's like, I just do the typical T5s, and then what is it? I'm sorry, I'm so bad at it.
No, that's like, okay. I was terrible at it for a long time.
It's like normally by type of UV light I use. Like, there's the ones that are a lot smaller from Exo-terra, and they like expand and they have really high UV. So I use ones like those for like the pallidus and such. So I guess it just depends on where they come from.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, that's not my. I'm not
that's
great
okay.
at that.
So with the lights, because this before for Zac, it was dirt. The last year and a half, I've been fascinated by dirt. Now I'm very interested in this whole idea of thermal husbandry, which we don't really talk about that much, but it's the whole, how do we provide heat and the intersection of heat and light and how the snakes use it and all that kind of jazz. Do you see with your racers and Coachwhips that, like, so the heat lamp comes on in the morning. Does it take them like an hour or two to kind of come out and get up, or do they like light and then they're moving up to do their basking in the morning to get up to operating temperature? Or there's not really a pattern at all?
Honestly, I think it just depends on what the overall temperature was that morning.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I'd say it might take them, you'd think they'd be quicker to rush up, but I think sometimes, you know, when it's cooler, they kind of slowly come out of their zone and go up to bask and stuff. But they are kind of random when it comes to what they want to do at what time.
Very, very cool. So, you know, we've covered the enclosure, the substrate. Well, actually, I don't know if we talked about the exact substrate.
We didn't.
Yeah. What are you keeping them on in these bibs?
So sometimes I'll do like a mix of like cocoa fiber and soils. A lot of the times I actually do use soils and sands and stuff. Less sand depending on, where they come from. But from the outdoors, we live on 12 acres, no pesticides or anything like that. And sometimes I think it's just nice to utilize what we have here, like the branches I'll take, the oak branches, the leaf litter, and it's all these nice smells and natural dirts that I think is really nice for them. And then, of course, like extra things like sphagnum and nesting and just kind of giving them all these different options. And they like to burrow sometimes too under the dirt. So, yeah.
Whoa.
Nice. Now, have you bred the buttermilks?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I got that female from my friend
Oh, that's right. You
Caitlin.
mentioned that.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh God, maybe 3 or 4 months ago now. It's been a little tricky. Apparently she was having trouble pairing it with her male too. So I don't know. I've only known like maybe 2 people personally that breed them. I know there's more, obviously, but this is like a new venture for me too. So I
Gotcha.
also have a camera on them. I've seen breeding behavior, but I haven't seen her show anything else other than that yet. But sometimes it just takes time to clock things in.
No, absolutely. Now, did you cycle? Did you, as far as attempting to breeding, what does that look like for you?
So this is actually the first year I've ever cycled anything. I know that sounds crazy, but a lot of the times I just let things just do what they do in the cage as far as that goes. But I really wanted to try and see how it turned out this year. And so basically I don't have like, I mean, in Texas we don't have basements or anything. Nothing that like is specific to cool. So I found a perfectly good fridge on on Craigslist, and it's on my front porch, and it has a thermometer and keeps it at a certain temp, and it worked perfectly. But of course, not ever doing it before, I was manic the whole time. Oh my
Oh,
God,
I
is this
bet.
the right
Yeah.
temp? Holy crap, don't freeze to death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was the first time I did it, and it turned out really well. I honestly didn't think the albino was gonna go yet, because he is smaller than the pink female, but I cooled him with the rest, and I know we're gonna get to that soon. So
Whew.
yeah, there he
Gosh.
is. So
That
yeah,
thing is smoking.
I know.
So
Um,
before we move away, how did that come to be? Where did the albino coach whip come from?
so I guess I mean I could be getting it not completely correct, but from what
That's
I
fine.
know, I guess there were some people who found it in a warehouse as a baby in Midlothian, Texas. Um, and I'm sure a lot of you Colubrid people know Connor Wardle.
Yeah.
Uh, it ended up
Mark
going to
Coach.
him. Yeah,
Yep.
he's great. He's another one of like my people when it comes to talking, uh, about racers and stuff. He's a really good guy. Um, and he'd raised it for a long time, and I was just like watching that thing like a hawk all the time. Um, and one day, he had to downsize, and he ended up gifting that snake to me, which is probably one of the nicest things anybody has ever done for me. I mean, look at that thing. It's
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
gorgeous. For those
Yeah.
that can't see this, the way that what I would probably compare it to in look is if you know what a T negative albino carinata looks like. Now, that's not the color, but the way that the pattern of a carinata is very busy for the top, like third to half of the body, and then the back half to third to 2/3 of the body is a solid coloration. It's like that, but these colors, instead of being that like bright yellow, going off of the picture here, the top half looks to be more of a like an orangish pink, if that's right in person.
Yeah.
And then the back is more of a almost white. There may be a light yellow there, but
it's white.
that's about to say it looks white in the picture from what I'm seeing here. So that's, like I said, not the same colors as a Carinata, but that pattern, that's what it would remind me of. But this is a stunning animal, for sure.
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of the times I'm kind of picky on albinos. I don't always like albino snakes,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something about that snake. It's just incredibly beautiful, and then there's something about finding a wild snake that's naturally albino that makes it even better. So, and it's cool watching it grow, because for those that don't know much about baby Coachwhips, they kind of start off quote unquote bland. I mean, obviously the albino looks like an albino, not like a tan Coachwhip, but as they grow, you start to see what their real colors are. And as he grows, more and more white comes out, and he's more of a creamsicle color. So, it's just interesting to see what they look like as they grow.
Now, are the Western Coachwhips, because I see that this is an albino Western, are those the ones that will, I know there's variability, but some of the real knockouts exhibit the black and the pink together? Okay, that's what I thought. And those are, I mean, just, insane. So, very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, there's the beautiful pink pair. I'm so lucky. Also, another gift. The male pink one, in the last picture, it's the one on the top that's kind of whitish pink. That was a gift from Stephen Cush, who I know a lot of people also know.
Yep.
And then the bottom one, the female, is actually was a long-term breeding loan from Johnny Rosenbaum. So eventually I have to give her back, which I'm very sad about, because I get so attached to snakes, so attached. But I have a lot of her offspring now, and I am honestly, next time I'm actually hoping to do an experiment on maternal behavior. So I'm kind of wanting to put a camera, and if you don't mind if I go in that real quick.
Yeah, so
Please
for those listening, one of the things that was really interesting when we were talking to Ryu at the Reptile Talks was that she kept looking at her phone. I was like, and you could see that there was a camera image on her phone. And I asked, like, well, what are you doing with that? Because I was curious. And you were checking in on, I think it was Algaria, and it was, or sorry, no, Texas alligator lizards, and I believe it was one of these guys, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, but, I have. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I want you to go in deep with this, because I know a lot of us, myself included, like, I leave on these trips all the time, and I leave my child, Colin, infamously in charge of like getting eggs, and we got big problems next week because Colin's going with me to Iowa, so now my wife has to do the egg duty. She doesn't know that yet.
Good luck, Kathy.
I am not brave enough to tell her. So
surprise!
It would be great if I could just have a freaking camera on the damn things and be like, "Hey, they're in there." You know what I'm saying? So if you wouldn't mind going, like, what the model of camera is, the subscription system, like all of this, because it's a really, really cool thing that you do.
Yeah, so I use pretty affordable ones, because I mean, obviously when you're an animal keeper and a zookeeper, you don't make much.
Yeah.
So it's more of a passion thing. So I use like the Amazon Blink Minis. They're like maybe like this big, and they have a night cam and a day cam, and pretty good quality. And then basically I have a phone app, and I can set them all up and just label what's what, and I can look at them from anywhere. I have one on the Gyaradotis, the Texas alligator lizard. I left a couple of her eggs in with her, so I'm tracking maternal behavior with her. And so far I've seen her like, nudging them, keeping like being
Nice.
tightly curled around them, just so focused on these eggs. And so I'm also going to let those couple of babies hatch and see what happens. Hopefully it's on the better end, because that would be kind of funny though if she was like nursing them and then, they hatch and she just eats them. But I doubt it, honestly.
Yeah.
Cooking them,
Yeah, right.
Now
Yeah.
the is there set up the Western Coach Whip? Are you doing those just like you were doing the buttermilks, or is there any husbandry differences there?
It's pretty much the same. I'd say more of a dry heat than a humid heat.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of some of the areas that buttermilk comes from, it can be pretty humid.
Do you want to share
Um,
those areas for the listeners where each of these are usually found?
so, from what I know, because I haven't even been there myself, so it's all just research. I use a lot of iNaturalist and stuff like that to base my
We all
cages.
Yeah.
Yeah, cages and exhibits on. Um, but they can come from a lot of like, what's the word I'm thinking of? Kind of muggier areas in Louisiana. Um, I actually might have the data, because I keep a list of where everything comes from as far as racers go. So, but yeah, I keep them in more of a humid-ish state than the
Gotcha.
others. Yeah, but yeah, I keep a camera on the Coachwhips too, mainly under the board, because that's their favorite spot. Which is why the most recent eggs that I found like a week ago, they were actually in the lay box for once, so I had no idea they were there until I opened it up to take a picture of the pair together. And I'm like, oh, cool, there's eggs. And that was like 2 months after she had laid the albino ones. So, yeah, she laid more pretty quickly. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
And I
Yeah.
take it these cameras have to be plugged in?
Say that
Or do
one
they
more time.
the cameras have to be plugged in, or do they run off of a battery?
Yeah, they have to be plugged in. That's the
Okay.
only negative part, but
That's why they make extension cords.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, but yeah, the reason I want to do maternal on the Coach Whip, which is kind of odd, I think, for most people. I wouldn't really think of something like that. The only reason I kind of had that idea, I guess, is because when I was taking the albino eggs out from the pink female, every time I'd take one out and set it in the Sims container, she'd look around and then she'd go back and start curling around him, like just very, like she had to be around them. And then I'd have to shoo her away, and then she'd come back and just
that's
curl up around him every single time.
Zach, do you know if there's any publications or research that talks about this behavior in the wild with
I
Coach
don't
Whips?
know of that for
About to say that's
Mastotopus or Coluber.
yeah, that's really neat. And it's typically when we're asked about any type of maternal incubation, or how are mother snakes with their babies, we usually say they lay their eggs and bounce, unless they're some of the python species that we know will maternal incubate. But to hear of this in them, I didn't expect it at all.
Yeah.
And just wanted to make sure I wasn't, the idiot that doesn't read scientific papers.
Mhm.
So this is really cool. And it's another example of what keepers can learn that we don't necessarily know, out in the field yet, is, you're seeing a new behavior here, describing one that I think is very interesting. And I'm with you. I'm interested to see what happens when they hatch, how she treats them. Do they just, obviously they're going to go their own way, but is it, I don't know. Hearing these maternal instincts it's very neat. I mean, I'm not familiar with it in really colubrid species, other than when they first lay. you know, and they can be a little protective of them at that moment. But this is awesome. It's really cool. How big do the Westerns get?
Oh man, another thing I'm really bad at.
Sorry.
It's okay. I would say some of mine are 6.5 foot. I have some really big ones. And then there's shorter ones. My Eastern is a lot shorter than that. I'd say like 4 or 5-ish. And then the babies are like teeny tiny.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha. Are you keeping them in typically the same size enclosures as what you described for the buttermilks, the 5 feet with 3
yeah,
foot of height, or gotcha? Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So when it comes to feeding them, can you walk through? I'm certain it's. Oh, all right. So let me back this up. Sorry about the little aneurysm there.
I do it all the time.
I know that people, myself included, have this idea that if you're going to bring a Kaluba or Masticophis into human care, or you're at the flipper table at the show and there's a coach whip, that we're going to buy this thing and it's going to be a bit of a nightmare to get it started because it's so stressed out and it may not be worth the effort. But I kept a Southern black racer when I was in college. I've talked about him a couple times. It's one of my absolute favorite snakes I've ever had. I think it was $10 at Pet Supplies Plus, and he was a 3-footer. But I kept him in a 125-gallon aquarium because I knew this is the early 2000s, before we had PVCs and Exos and all kinds of stuff. I just knew that he needed the space, and he was only like a 3-footer. But I distinctly remember thinking, this thing's just not going to eat. And back then, it was a fairly common practice to use live food. And I will never forget the first time I dropped a mouse in, because I can't unsee what that thing did to that mouse.
Yeah, they're crazy.
They don't constrict, even though it's Kaluba constrictor. They just like grab and then beat, crunch, beat.
Yeah.
Get it so it doesn't move that much, then swallow, and it's like kicking as it's going down its throat. So anyway, what has been your experience with getting these things started, and what do they eat, and then what is your feeding regime?
Okay, so I have to go off with the live thing real quick because I just saw something with the albino not that long ago. You know how like sometimes when you breed rodents too, you end up getting an excess, or an excess. The mice just breed and then you have a bunch of adults.
Yeah.
So I started throwing a couple around to kind of thin it out because we had enough frozen. But the albino, what he did is he grabbed it and he held it down with his body like this.
He pinned it. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he pinned it, and so it couldn't move, and he just kept grabbing its face until he just started eating it almost alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're
That's the
crazy
way.
like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's funny when you go from, even with frozen thawed, when you go from like a python or boa or something along those lines, where it's just like, eating all slow, and then you give Coach Whip a mouse and it's just like,
Yeah.
2 seconds it's gone.
False waters eat them like M&Ms if they're alive. It's very
Yeah.
disturbing.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
I want to say real quick. So we've mentioned this before about how much information out there is dated information.
Yeah.
And may have been true at one point for our knowledge or abilities, whenever that was stated. So, to your point, Zach, I used to believe the same thing because it was what we were all told, that, when it came to racers, that it's just not something good for captivity, because their needs, we just can't meet them. And I think in a way back then, let's talk, early 2000s, 90s, 2000s, that we probably couldn't really meet, their needs with the information we had and the products that were available, to us at that point. But with more, not only the advancement in, the stuff that we have, but the advancement in the understanding of what they really need and their behaviors. We don't necessarily need an 8-foot enclosure, for these snakes. They do find, and I don't want to call it smaller enclosures, but smaller than 8 feet, compared to what we believed in the past. And then with having the access to the proper overhead heating, putting UVB on them where 20 years ago we wouldn't have done that. All these things combined, I think you're now seeing a maternal, incubation, basically these maternal behaviors where my guess is you wouldn't be seeing that, or you wouldn't see eggs in the first place if you weren't meeting the needs, of these animals. So as we continue to get deeper and deeper into the understanding of the animals, the understanding of their environments, and what that really looks like, and the paper that you just put up earlier, Zac, that shows, what all these montane king habitats look like, for example. As we understand all of that, I think that there are species like these that will continue to be able to prove that with the right attention, we are able to set them up successfully in captivity and learn things that we already have, we just showed that we've not learning, out in the field. So kudos to you, on these species and what you're doing, and the going the extra step with the cameras and things like that to really show what they do. And right.
So
yeah. Oh, sorry.
Go for it. No,
I was gonna say, in my opinion, what's the point of keeping if you can't learn more and more from these animals? That's why I like some of the tough stuff too, because it's like cracking the code is really interesting, or even with common species going above and beyond, trying new foods and being like, oh man, I didn't know that would eat snails or this would eat meat, or you know what I mean? And just constantly trying new things is nice, and it's another form of enrichment too. New smells, new tastes. I give the Coachwhips, mice, small rats, even sometimes quail, and what else? They really like. So if you have a picky adult, try chicken gizzards because they really love them.
that's interesting. So,
Yeah.
how often is it just a once a week? Is it a couple times a week? When you see them
Honestly,
cruising?
yeah, it's honestly not. I mean, when I was younger, and in my 20s and stuff, um, it was. I thought it was just a routine thing, and I honestly don't really do that much anymore, except maybe like babies. Um, and of course, younglings need more to keep their strength up and grow, get out of that fragile baby stage.
Sure.
But adults, I kind of just pay attention to what they should look like, how they're acting, if they're moving around a lot and looking. The thing about racers is they'll tell you if they're hungry. They will be up at the glass, going back and forth, trying to bite the glass, you'll know. So, yeah.
So
And
on
that to me,
that token, real quick, these things, it sounds like they figure out who their keeper is.
Yeah.
They recognize, they do associative learning. So they, like you were mentioning, now you're walking around with the tongs. You don't have a rat. You're just holding tongs, and the racer is just kind of like following you, glass surfing. How long does that take in your like when you get one fresh off a table, like you were talking about? Is it a neurotic mess, or is it just a very passive snake? And then one day you come in and it's like, "Hey, Ryu, how's it going?" Or is it like a gradual process where you can kind of see them building their confidence?
I think it can be gradual, especially because sometimes or quite often you'll get wild racers that they don't want to eat, they're angry, they just want to bite, and then they'll just hide a lot, and then eventually, they start coming out, they start recognizing you, and they get really bold. So I don't know, it's not an exact amount of time. Yeah, but the silver on exhibit, it took a little bit but I think that also plays into the fact that there's so many people walking by all the time.
Yeah.
And then this time she just recognized I wasn't even against the cage. I was further back with tools ready to feed something else. And yep, that's her clutch. Funny racer. She always tries to steal food from the rattlesnake. Yeah. Because on that same exhibit, there is a ornate blacktail rattlesnake. I love them. I need a female real bad. But yeah, rattlesnakes and Coachwhips, great combo. Just fantastic combination of animals that you can keep together.
Now I've seen where there's, I can't remember who, but I know it's been more than once. I've seen videos of people out field herping, flipping, a board or 10 and finding Coachwhips and rattlers under the same, piece of artificial cover. Very common. So I'm not surprised.
There's a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, and then there's
there you go.
Cingulum, the Arizona Coachwhip. Yep, and then the Cerberus. The Arizona's a lot prettier than in that photo. He's in shed. That's another picky eater. He's weird. It's like whenever you move him, which I had to move him back on exhibit, he'll just go on a feeding strike forever, and then he starts eating again. So he's finally started eating again, which is great. But yeah, that's another one I need to pair up.
Before we move too far from it, I want to point out something that you mentioned that we always like to highlight, the tips on keeping. And we said this before, but paying attention to their behaviors, letting the snake tell you things, where, again, yeah, we can say a feeding schedule of every 5 days, every 7 days, every whatever for a species. But to your point, they tell you things if you just pay attention. When they come and start cruising, the front and watching you, they absolutely, that's the sign to look for. We talked before about, if it's always on the cool end, well, you probably have your hot end too hot. If it's always on the hot end, you probably have your, it's not hot enough. Just things like that, and listening to the snakes or paying attention to the snakes, and they're going to let you know what they need or what they are getting too much of. And the behaviors you described, like I don't keep, racers. I don't keep Coachwhip. I haven't anyway. Probably the closest thing I would say would be the bear and I that I have now. Those racers. But those, and I have some cave dwelling, rat snakes, and their behaviors can be very similar to what I see in racers, and both of which do that exact same thing. They let you know whenever they're hungry. The bear and I are always hungry. I mean, it's like they're just on point. And I think I've mentioned this on the show too, where the cave dwelling rats, the pair that we have anyway, they don't cruise it back and forth. They just hold their mouth open. When you walk in, they sit still, hold their mouth open, and wait for you to open the door and lay a mouse in it. They've gotten lazy. Yes, but yeah, that's right. I forgot. We walked in and Zac sees them just just
that's
wanting
so
to be fed.
awesome.
So it's cool. But yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. That they let you know what they want, and so react accordingly.
Yeah, and they don't always get what they want because I don't want them to be fat.
Right.
I try to keep them closer to the wild type, and not too round, especially for being so skinny. But they do have a fast metabolism, so that really helps.
Yeah. Awesome.
So when you do get eggs, is it just a standard lubricant incubation, or do you have to do anything fancy with the eggs?
I just put them in the Sims container above. Is that perlite's the one that sits under, right? Yeah, perlite. And then vermiculite's the brown one. I always mix them up. Sorry, but yeah, that's how I have them set up. And then, so how with crocodilians, and I'm not sure what else you can change, or you can determine what their sex is based on temperature. I don't know this for sure, but I am trying. So the last 2 clutches that I had from the Masticophis were very male heavy. So this time they're at a different temperature. So I'm kind of hoping to see maybe more females. So that'll be an interesting thing. It would be really helpful if it does depend on that.
Yeah, that would be weird and
Yeah,
cool.
it would be cool.
Absolutely.
Okay.
How difficult are babies to start?
They can be pretty difficult. Yeah, they're teeny tiny. But it took a lot of trial and error, and you know, as a lot of reptile or exotic keepers in general, it's hard to talk about the failures and stuff, but that's some of the most important things to talk about. And I know
Yes.
that when others talk about it, it kind of makes me feel a little better that I'm not like awful at keeping, because stuff happens. Um, but I had a lot of trouble getting them to feed the first time I produced them. People would say, "Oh, anoles, and frogs and stuff like that." I didn't have as much success with that. So my best success was basically giving them like little pinky noses, and luckily they're angry enough that they will bite no matter what. So getting them to hold on to that is the hardest part, because they will toss it and throw it across the entire cage, throwing a fit. And so over time, it's just like giving them a head and kind of like assist feeding them until they start taking it on their own. But yeah, at first it was like things didn't make it, or they escape, and stuff like that. But I eventually kind of got it going, and it's just assisting, and then getting to larger pinks, and they just start eating on their own. And then who's I think I was on Steven's podcast, and somebody had mentioned because I brought up the chicken gizzards. They're like, "Well, did you use it on babies?" And I'm like, "You know what? Why didn't I ever try that? Like with the adult." So once these new ones shed, I'm gonna try that out and see what happens. And that would be great if it made my life easier.
Have you ever tried throwing a cricket in there with
I was
them?
going to say the same thing.
I have no interest at all.
Nothing.
Really?
No.
Wow.
Yeah. I was hoping that would be it, because that was so much easier.
Because I was almost wondering if it's more of an insect, at that size, and because thinking about where they're at, a lot of
Yeah.
times where they're found, that would be what's in abundance. And so,
Real quick,
something.
I'm sorry.
No, go please.
Go for it.
Off of the insect thing, when I was struggling with baby blue racers, um, the thing that really worked was what is it called? A waxworm.
Really?
Uh, it did not want to eat, and then suddenly I threw a waxworm in just all over it. So
That's
that's
a
how it.
caterpillar. So that
Yeah,
makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that's how I started the blue racer just eating, and eventually it just went to pinks. Um, so yeah, I almost wonder if I tried again, uh, but with those, I don't know.
Be worth a shot. It sounds like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So this is going to be kind of out of left field. So I apologize for this. I want to.
Whatever.
Maybe it's because of how quick they change, or if there's any other behaviors that you can lend a thought on. So in my area, we have a lot of black racers. I mean, they're right behind black rat snakes as far as commonality. The thing is, I get pictures of baby black rat snakes sent to me all the time, every year. Tons of them out and about. But when it comes to black racers, I don't see those until they're 3 foot plus, and jet black. It's I want to say in all my life I've only had one picture of a baby that's not changed yet, still had its pattern.
Yeah.
One picture of a baby black racer ever sent to me. And I don't know why that is, why they are not found, especially being that, the adults are out so much
Yeah.
during the day. You figure the babies would be cruising just as often. Is there any behaviors, or is the color change, oh, well, they only have pattern for about 4 days. What is it that is there anything that you think of that would cause that behavior, or my lack of seeing them, or others in the area, the lack of seeing young ones, juveniles?
I wonder, these are just theories. Because the babies in the rack, they prefer to burrow under a lot of substrate most of the time, and be as secure and under and behind things as much as possible. Even when I moved them up to a bigger enclosure, they'd stay under or behind a rock or under a log. Um, so there's that, and then I almost wonder if they're just harder to spot because of the coloration that blends in with the dirt and stuff. I don't
They
know. I don't
also,
really. Huh?
sorry, they also prefer a different habitat than rat snakes. Rat snakes are seeking out
Mhm.
complexity, so that
Oh
they're
yeah,
seeking out rock ledges and dead trees and wood piles, and
yeah,
that, whereas a racer is happiest when it's in a dense mat of grass, and so it's out in the field. And when it gets to that edge of the field, the ecotone of the field, it basically is like, oh hell no, and goes right back into the field.
yeah.
I remember there was a time that I helped a farmer locally do hay, and they were baling the hay, and it was like a freaking black racer bloodbath. Not the happiest thing to talk
Oh
about,
Mm.
no.
but and the very first baby racers I saw were actually wrapped up in the hay bales. Like that, like I was like,
Oh
what the hell kind of snake is this? Now they had been killed through the process, so they weren't suffering.
yeah.
And then I realized, oh, that's a racer. And then 8 bales later, there's another juvenile racer, and so that really made an impression on me. So I just think it's a different kind of like that's what the babies are doing. Now I will say at camp on my campus is kind of fun because racers are an uncommon snake in the northern panhandle of West Virginia
Yeah.
because we're mostly woods. All of our
Mhm.
fields they're man-made. We don't have natural. We don't really have good racer habitat here. Um, and interestingly, I've only been called to one black rat snake on campus, but I've been called to 3 racers that were on our campus. One was the greatest thing I've ever seen on my campus. You would have thought that there was a freaking rabid king cobra killing everyone. The way people were running and screaming, like it was like a freaking B horror movie. Just I walked out
It's
on the
chasing
quad
me.
and was like, "Where's the it's over there?" And there's like people running and everything. And this thing was posted up, ready to go because it had been surrounded by our maintenance guys. And it was, I mean, it was like it had flipped the racer switch where I'm going to bite and chew all y'all. And I freaked everybody out because I knew I was getting bit. It was one of those like, there's no way this is not happening. And I just walked up, grabbed him. It was about a 4.5 footer, and it's just like bam, 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 which made even more people run and scream. So, um, but then I was called out to 2 other black rat snakes on campus that were freaking racers. So I approached them like they were big, cautious rat snakes that then bit the hell out of me because I was thinking rat snake and they turned out to be racers. But all the racers that we have found, they've all come from this field that
Yeah,
that is near campus. So,
Gotcha.
that's cool.
but I think that's what's going on, Clint.
Very well
Because
be. It's. I guess the
Yeah, I
only
can
thing
see
that I
that.
wonder then is more of the, because even in the areas, the fields, because you're right. That's typically where I'm seeing them, is fields, or even near. I guess it's still kind of be fielded areas where there's lakes, and I mean there's lakes everywhere, out here. Um, but it's the same thing. I'll find the adults on the crawl, but the babies just
Mhm.
never. Never, never. So it's interesting, but yeah, you're probably right. They're more in the grass, rather than out basking on something that we can see their contrast on. And a long black snake is, you can see on the dirt, you can see on whatever it is that typically are on. So makes sense.
So we're getting near the end here, and we have not asked our final question in the past couple episodes, and I'm very curious what your answer to this would be. So we're going to bring something back. I think the last time we asked this might have been with Josh. And so you also work at Reptilandia. So let's give Reptilandia a plug, because if you're a herpetoculturalist and you don't know about Reptilandia, you're not on social media, you don't have the interweb, you listen to us, you need to look up Reptilandia. I actually got offered to go to a crayfish conference in Texas, and I was like, how far is that from Reptilandia? And when I found out it was on the other side of Texas, I was like, I'll pass.
Yeah.
So you guys are literally determining whether I go to conferences in Texas now. So anyway, but the cages are great. I saw Quetzal Dwyer, who is the guy that kind of sponsored it and owns it. I saw his facility in Costa Rica, and when I heard that was coming to Texas, I was blown away. So before we get to the final question, just kind of tell the listeners what Reptilandia is and why they should absolutely, unequivocally, 100% go there.
So Reptilandia is basically one of the largest reptile zoos in the US. And so if you're a reptile nerd or somebody who hardly knows anything about them, you're going to be excited because you're going to see really rare stuff that you never get to see. Milos vipers, perenni monitor, just all kinds of cool stuff. And then there's also like common stuff that you would normally not see set up the way it is. So we have basically 3 buildings. One, the first one is like there's a gift shop, there's an ethnographics museum, and a nursery. The ethnographics museum is what Ari set up, which basically takes cultures from around the world and relates them to reptiles and how they see them in these carvings and all these things. We have a nursery window where you can see the babies that we've produced. Everybody loves those. They're adorable. Including baby croc monitors, which we have one available if anyone's interested. And then the 2 other buildings, we have one that's temperate, and then the other one's tropical, and the tropical one's 2-story. So we have a lot of natural skylights, large naturalistic exhibits, and most of them are multi-species exhibits. So you get to see wild behaviors and the way that they interact with each other and sympathetic relationships and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a huge zoo. We're trying to do something completely different.
Yeah, and it's badass. And I go to zoos all over the country. I haven't even been there. I just know what I've seen, what I've heard, people I respect say about it. It's probably it is one of the top reptile facilities in the country. So y'all need to go give that thing a gander like yesterday. And if you're in Texas, go tomorrow. Like, just give up your job and go tomorrow.
Yeah, get fired. Just take the day off without asking. Go to Johnson City.
Your job. Wrong phrase. Some people are very literal in their interpretation of what I say, and that could be bad for them. But now our final question that we asked, and this is one of the final things Matt Most did with the show before he went on and Clint took over, and I always like asking it. Is so herpetoculture today is very different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And some people kind of look at the state of herpetoculture, private herpetoculture, professional herpetoculture, with this kind of pessimistic lens right now. Other people look at it with a optimistic lens. Some people look at it with a neutral lens. What is your lens? How do you see the facet of herpetoculture that you dwell in? Do you think it's expanding? It's a great time to be a herpetoculturalist. It's not so great. Just stream of consciousness, your view of the state of herpetoculture today.
Okay, so this is a big one. So I'd say personally, I'd say sometimes it's a double-edged sword. So on the good side, we are learning about these animals more. We're teaching the public that they're not so bad. We are doing conservation on them. So we're breeding a lot, especially in the private sector. No, no hate on zoos; they do too, but the private sector is really kicking out a lot of species that would be extinct at this point, if not. And then I'd say that the kind of negative part can be the way that some of us present ourselves, especially nowadays with social media. Um, just doing things that are dangerous, and you can do what you want within your own home, but if it affects the community negatively and the way that people look at us and the laws that can be put on us, that's not a good thing. So it really does, it depends on the person and how they're presenting themselves and how they're taking care of the animals. Yeah, that's just my opinion on it.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Well said. Well, we are at our 2-hour mark. We respect your time and don't want to keep you much longer. But if people want to reach out to you, they're interested in Coachwhips, they want to talk about your cameras, they want to get more info on Reptilandia, how do you recommend they make contact with you?
So both my personal page and Reptilandia have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. Reptilandia is obviously Reptilandia Zoo, but it's the U.S. one. There's still a Costa Rican one, so just make sure it's the U.S. one that you're following.
Yes.
And then Blackstone Exotics is my my personal thing where I just go through all the projects I'm working on, update on what laid eggs or had litters, update on behaviors and stuff like that. So yeah, you can find that there too.
All right.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was a fun one.
It was.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Eyeballs. So this was fantastic. Clint, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Clint Bartley, or the Metazotics Facebook. On Instagram, it's MetazoticsLLC. You can also check out what we have available at any time at Metazotics.com. And remember that if you do make a purchase, use coupon code CC Radio for 5% off of anything that you get. And you can always email us at metazotics@gmail.com.
Righty. If you want to get a hold of me, Zac Loughman on Facebook, Dr. Crawdad on Instagram, and got a full docket of grad students right now. Normally, I'm like, I need more grad students. I got plenty of grad students. But if you're interested in doing herpetology, working with crayfish, doing our graduate zoo science degree, by all means, reach out to me. If you are listening to this and you are in high school, and you're contemplating college and you want to go to college where you get to work with 400 plus reptiles on a daily basis, and it's a requirement of your degree, please consider us because we would love to have you. And so, yeah, so be it afternoon, evening, morning, or night, whatever time of day it is. I hope you have a blessed time. And with that being said, have a good one.